there's a possibility of, like, you know, we have a box hive, just taking other boxes,
Absolutely.
doubling them.
Absolutely. If I was to build a standard beehive, I'd build it out of 2x material instead of 1x material. Absolutely.
Could I ask you to hold for a second? I'll put the film over.
Sure.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Is there anything else he says? Commercial time.
We still got people in the middle going like this.
I'll ask my question.
If you get in tight with a guy that's got bees 5 or 10 years, been keeping bees, it would be a good idea to see if he would sell you a split hive.
Absolutely.
Because they would already be acclimated.
Absolutely. Now, it's even a bonus if he's keeping them naturally. If he's not keeping them naturally, well, get what you can.
Well, they'd be better than southern bees.
Absolutely.
Because they would be at least a year old.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ready?
That is.
Yeah.
Sonari, are you Beekeeping? That sounds totally different than
Pardon me?
they put new queens in.
Yeah.
Is this a good or bad practice in your?
I think it's a bad practice. Their theory is if you keep putting a new queen in and the colony stays young and vigorous, and she'll outproduce. You know, if a colony's growing extremely fast, she can outproduce the mites. She can stay ahead of the mite problem. That's part of their theory behind it. Another theory is they're just trying to find a super queen that can solve all their problems. I think it's a bad idea. I think the bees will supersede a poor queen. It seems kind of heartless, but if a queen is not producing well, they'll create new queens and they'll ship her out. Commercial beekeepers not likely to change anytime soon. And I'll tell you why. They're kind of in a fix. They have kids to send to college. They have bills to pay. A lot of them are mortgaged at the bank. They have thousands of hives. They've got this big operation, employees. And they've got a system that's worked that their dad taught them how to do and their grandpa taught them how to do. And it's slowly drifted from nature. But they've been doing it long enough, they think that's normal. And if they left their honey crop for the bees to survive the winter, it would devastate them. Their banker would be knocking on their door. That's a very valuable honey crop that I'm saying give it back to the bees. And they're like, you're crazy. I can buy sugar now high fructose corn syrup because we subsidize the corn crop. Now high fructose corn syrup is cheap enough, that's what they use. They're saying, you want me to give up this expensive honey and instead of buying this cheap substitute? That's what I'm saying. And economically, they can't do it. I mean, the market, we're in a supply and demand market. And that's another thing I'd like to point out to you guys. If you buy honey, buy it from somebody raising them naturally and pay them the higher price. That's how markets work. He's got a superior product, pay him a superior price.
Aren't commercial operations subsidized also?
Exactly. That was my next point. The reason their system works is when their bees die, they can run to the federal government or some agency and get a handout or bailout. So basically, our bailouts, our subsidies, are propping up a dead industry, and so it works for them. You know, they can get a honey crop, they can hit the pollination in California or wherever, pollinate. They can turn in their sheet with the dead bees, and they can get a check for the dead ones. It's a good point. Another thing about high fructose corn syrup that I didn't mention is if someone feeds that to their bees, the bees are going to take it and store it in the honey cells. And so when they harvest honey off of that, they're getting it's tainted by high fructose corn syrup. Now, depending on what time of year they put that on, is depending on how much you're going to get, but there's a good chance you're going to get some of that in what you think is natural honey. That's not to mention the import honey. Dr. Sanford probably understands that better than I do, but they just busted a big ring of people bringing in millions and millions of dollars worth of honey from China, laundering it through other countries and showing up on your grocery store shelves. And they tested them and they were laden with chemicals. So if you want to help the beekeeping industry and you don't want to keep bees yourself, pay the higher price to natural, sustainable beekeeping.
Is there a website that identifies locations for? You said something about natural beekeeping clubs. Is there some organization that would make it easier to find those individuals?
I think there is, but I can't recall it right off the top of my head, but you can probably find it in Google search. Now, I have started a Google group for that purpose. I'm trying to match up wannabe beekeepers with veteran beekeepers. I like the idea of somebody calling a beekeeper up and saying, I want to come help you, and I want to start a bees. And so I started a Google or a Yahoo group for that purpose. Sign on to there and say, I'm so-and-so, I'm a natural beekeeper, I've got a start for sale, or I'm a newbie and I need someone to mentor me. The problem I found is most everybody on it is newbies, and so I've started to create some video tutorials to help with the process, and I don't have enough of them on my website yet and on YouTube, but as I get questions, I go out, I create a video, and I post it, and eventually I'll be able to just refer someone to a video when they ask a question.
So when you're saying natural beekeepers, they're feeding their bees honey, there are local people that are feeding their bees the sugar and the corn syrup. Is that considered natural honey then?
It's not the strictest sense of natural beekeeping, no. If they're treating the bees with respect everywhere but they're feeding them sugar, you can put up with a little of that. But if they're dumping all the chemicals in there and feeding them the sugar and taking all their honey, I would stay away from that practice.
I just have a comment. If anyone wants to start keeping bees, look around and see if you have a local club. There are a lot of new beekeepers in the same position, and a lot of the local clubs have mentor programs, and you'll find a lot more natural beekeepers than you think in a local club too.
And I'd also add an addendum to that. A lot of your local clubs have been trained by the old folks in there who have done it the commercial way for years. My club teaches replacing the queen once a year, taking the queens, pinching the queen cells, feeding them sugar. I go because I like to talk to beekeepers and find out what's blooming this time of year, but I don't say a lot. I've said more here tonight than I've ever said at my bee club. They look at me like I was crazy. So take that with a grain of salt. If you go to a bee club, you're dealing with a lot of years of indoctrination.
Do you use any essential oils?
I do not.
What do you think about it?
Well, I've never seen a bee carry essential oils into their beehive. So I don't do it.
I usually use spearmint.
Uh-huh.
We have wild mint, and I've noticed my bees really work.
Now I'd like to congratulate you. It's a step up from using chemicals. That I don't place stuff in the hive that they don't bring in themselves. Now they do bring propolis in, which I could argue is very similar in its disinfectant qualities to a lot of the oils that you place in there. Propolis is a very high disinfectant. They sterilize their inside their house is clean, unlike mine. It's very nice and clean.
If you're just starting out and you're looking for honey to feed your bees to build foundation, what would you recommend? Where do you get that from?
Get it as pure as you can. If you can't find it pure, go to the next best thing. Just buy honey. If you can't find that, use sugar. Don't ever go to the high fructose corn syrup. I never feed sugar. I never have. Hopefully I never will. But sometimes you have to break one or two of the natural rules to get up and going. But I would recommend this. Another thing we could do on this list is swap honey. I've got natural honey. If someone else is starting out, you know, I need 5 pounds of honey to get my colony up and going.
you wanted to start from a wild group of bees, where would you start?
A worn out group of bees?
No, a wild.
Oh, wild.
Oh, a tree.
For your area. For your area, starting with a wild hive, where would you start
So
to
you,
look?
where would you start looking? I would call the fire department, the 911 people. I would ask them to put me on, in fact I do this. I say, put me on your swarm list. Frantic homeowners call in and they're freaked out because there's this big bundle of bees, they don't know what the hell it is, and they want it out of there. That is a find. You find a big swarm, especially early spring swarm, and that is a good find. Chances are it's good, you know, hopefully it's good local genetics. If not, we're going to pretend it is, right? We'll go from there.
What is your, like if you did do that, I had an old gentleman that got me started. I lost my bees, but he just laid a white sheet out, put a hive down, put some honey around there, and then they swarmed through. What would you suggest for getting it?
To attract a swarm?
He could find a swarm that would come from his hive, and then he would lay a white sheet down, and they would be just drawn to that. But, I mean, he's an old guy. Now, what do you? If you
I'm not familiar with it. Now, I've seen people use the white sheets to transfer bees one hive to another, but are you familiar with that?
I don't know if that's.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that practice.
Well, he's dead now.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
wasn't because of bees.
hopefully something good didn't die with you.
But how, what do you do? Like, if you find a swarm, what is the process?
Well, if I find a swarm, in my country quite often it's high in a tree because I have a lot of trees. And I will either park my tractor and run a 40-foot ladder up there, and I've seen people on YouTube, I thought it's quite ingenious. They take a plastic carboy, those water jugs that sits on a water cooler, and they'll cut the bottom off of it. So it's now just the neck and the bottle, and they'll fasten that to the end of a PVC pipe. Run that up, put it right underneath the swarm, and then they'll just bash the limb. What you're trying to do is just jolt them loose from the branch that they're hanging on, fall into that, and dump it in a hive, and then go back and smack it again. And what you're trying to do when you collect a swarm is you're trying to make sure you have the queen. Well, you got to make sure you have the queen. And so quite often when you think you're done, stick around and scan the area for a glob of bees, because if the queen's there, the bees will come around her, and make sure you've got the queen, or you've wasted your time. BeeLanding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Do you have, I have somebody who's keeping bees kind of commercially on their land. How close can I put a hive to there? How far does it have to be?
How many do they have?
About 6 hives.
6 hives? Oh, I wouldn't worry about it. Just put it wherever you want. The rule of thumb is 20 hives per yard, but a lot of that depends on the local conditions.
You said earlier you talked about how you harvest your honey.
Oh,
You haven't
yeah.
gotten there yet.
Excuse me. Let me see if I can find a picture.